All right, in this video, what we're going to be looking at is CSS. It's our first kind of brush through with CSS. So what we're going to do is ask what it is, go through a brief explanation of that, and then we're going to look at some, bad websites that obviously use CSS, but we're going to kind of see maybe what not to do before we actually go and do maybe the things that we ought to do correctly. And if that sounds kind of ambiguous, I'll provide the visuals in just a moment. But then we're going to have some working examples. We're going to look at more of the common things you may do with CSS, like work with font, images, links, doing stuff with borders, which are also really good for problem solving, styling a table. And then I want to get into showing the developer tools and then maybe do some more robust exercises at the end of this video. So let's get going and go ask ourselves, what is CSS, and look at some examples. So what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It may just sound like whatever, cascading style sheets, kind of hard to say 10 times fast, but it allows us to style a page. And that's kind of what I think me and most general students come to, is like, oh, CSS, design, make things happen. But the cascading part is not just there for, I guess, fun to make it sound cool. The cascading part will make a bit more sense once we get into how to bring it into our project, which is not that difficult. And it'll make even more sense when we get to the things like the DOM and how websites are kind of set up and flow and all that other stuff. But we can think of it as now, and potentially for the rest of our careers, as a way to style a page and make it look good. So we could be talking about images, text, where things are on the screen, and how it could look different and be remodeled, resized, repurposed, whether it's on a tablet or on a phone or on one of those gigantic curvy monitors, right? There's a lot of things we could do with it because its sole purpose is to take that markup from HTML and just obviously give it some flair. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some bad websites. One of these, I actually did a project in grad school where I had to kind of lightly redesign it, and I chose it because it was funny, but it ended up being kind of a nightmare. So let's go to our first example of a bad website using CSS. And so we're not going to go into too much theory here, but you're probably leaning back in your seat or fell out of your seat here. And this is linkscars.com. And you can see that there's a whole heck of a lot of things going on in here. There's this, it's like when you go to a store, a fabric store, and you see this trippy kind of fabric, and you're like, what would you ever use that for? It's almost like they took the fabric, like this style, and then digitized it and slapped it in the background. But then you have all these colors, these links, fun stuff. You click this link, and then you have more things. You have missile truck. What does that mean? Is there any other references to a missile truck on this website here? You could scroll down. You could obviously make out that they're selling you cars. Obviously, it's called linkscars.com. But you have a lot going on, and this is pretty funny too. And then you have all this white space, and then all this going down. I kind of have this gamer weighted mouse, so if I scroll quickly, I apologize. And then you have the fine print down here. And what's this arrow do? It doesn't really do much right here. But here are the socials. We're scrolling all the way back up, and we could see that it's easy to get lost. Now, when we start doing our websites, they will maybe look a little confusing like this at first, but nowhere near this bad. I think this is a bit more purposeful of design. But even if we go into cars, let's go to the full price list. We'll just click this. Does it even work? Yeah, I think it does work. So we're going to let this load. And just look at the font. Look at all this. I mean, this is on a 27-inch screen monitor or 25-inch screen monitor I'm looking at. And this is kind of hard to read. You may be squinting on your screen, and that's, I'm not going to enlarge it because I'm trying to make it feel real for you. And if you want, you could just go to linkscars.com. And so I'm going to show you developer tools later, but I'm going to cheat right now. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to inspect the page. And let's see how this is on an iPhone X right now. Mine currently is an XS. I'm probably dating myself even more. But you see, you have to scroll sideways. Like, do you really want to do this when you are looking at information? Let's go to an iPad. And you see, you still have to scroll sideways. And this is at 75% of the window size here. But you could see that if we go to just pure responsive, take this off, right? It is really meant for a desktop. And I realize that some services that you will make in your career will dominantly be for a desktop. No one's realistically going to be doing certain kinds of work on an iPad or a tablet or some kind of phone. It just doesn't make sense. But when you are selling something, think about all the missed opportunities, not just in the poor design on desktop, but with people being mobile now. I think over 85% of the people accessing the internet use phones. This is kind of crazy, right? This is a little intense. And so let's go to another example here. This is the Yale School of Art. I looked up this, and I think they switch out who has, design type of like oversight on this. I'm not quite sure because this does change quite a bit. But this is Yale, right? This is a school that charges you a lot of money. And I realize art could just be whatever, but this is a little insane for a art school because I don't understand the flow. I don't understand what's going on here. I definitely don't. And so there's this undergraduate exhibit, and I understand art. I understand, people, it's about, expression, doing all this fun stuff. But CSS isn't just about making things flash like this. You have a background, you have colors, you have, this, the background is white where it says news from New Haven. It's about taking that markup, which is what? Information, text, what things are important, links, where do I want you to go? And it's a way for you not just to make things look pretty or be experimental, is to help guide your customers or your end user through an experience seamlessly. So this is heavy on the artistic side, I guess you would say, even though it's not my favorite kind of art. Like you could scroll inside of here, and yeah, that's kind of weird. But it's the CSS is not doing what it's intended to do, which is make it easy for me to navigate. Could you imagine being someone from a generation prior that already has a difficult enough time using computers, and they, their kid says, I want to go to the, Yale School of Art, and the parent comes to this website and says, this is a waste of money if you're going to make a bunch of crap like this. I could totally see that argument. I could see my dad making that argument. And so as a school too, I can understand the fun of allowing whoever to make this page. Yeah, it says right here, page last changed by, this person. But at the same time, like, what is this saying about the school as a whole, right? This next one is called Budgets Are Sexy. It's X out of there. And this isn't as anywhere near as robustly intense as the previous one, right? But we have this ad right here. Okay, it's a tiny little X for me to click out of it. So it's a very small target box, which if I had a visual disability or I needed assistance, right, this is blocking some stuff for me. So I'm going to click this to make it go away. Then I have this ad thing right here. Oh, I could click it to go away, but now I have to actually come over here, or I could click on the accessibility, which, this icon here, which I'm not even going to do. Oh, so it doesn't really change much. So the X and then this, oh, I guess I can get rid of it now. And you see how close they were right there. Like that is trash. That is very, very, very bad. You have all this room on a desktop and you chose to remove the ads and then also keep the accessibility menu like really close. Like that doesn't make sense. But we can see up here, we have all of this real estate to the left and to the right. And maybe I could imagine how this looks on a tablet. It will just be, You won't have as much to the left and the right, but it seems like, there's a lot of stuff going on here too. And so they're not utilizing all this extra space, but we have this stuff. I guess this is for the socials. This is for Facebook. I don't know what this is. Maybe some kind of, I don't know what this would be. We have a search site, which I figured the search site would be up here in the header somewhere, or at least the main menu. But then when we come up here to even criticize this, we have Millionaire Club. What does that mean? Net worth of who? Subscribe. What are we subscribing to? What are you trying to sell me? We have blog roll. Can it just be the word blog? What's spavings? Is that savings and there was a typo? Like what is this, right? And so these are just links. We've already seen how to create links, but what does any of this mean? It's not taking you through a flow, and you have more questions and you're less likely to click on any of these because you have a lack of information, and therefore it seems untrustworthy. And then we have services we love. Okay, why do you love them? I'm still trying to figure out what you do as a website. Budgets are sexy. Where's the sexy part? Where's the budget part? And then we have, most popular and favorite posts. Well, okay, that's awesome, but do they have to be right here? And it says 10 most popular posts of 2019. Well, it's definitely past 2019 right now. Are these 10 most popular? Does that mean you only wrote 10 posts in 2019? Like, why are they popular? And why am I going all the way back to 2015? It just seems like this could be organized better. And then you saw this change right here. So, this just disappeared. So now this is an ad. So this just changed from me hovering over it or something in the background. So my user experience, maybe I wanted to click on something, but then now I have this save the children thing here, which, if you want to donate, go for it. But now, like, a piece of functionality kind of flat out just disappeared. Kind of weird. Anyways, maybe my eyes are just failing me. And then you have categories down here after another ad. And then you have this link featured on All Star Money. Like, what the hell does this mean? There's this jester hat. That doesn't look very serious and business oriented. Meanwhile, I have all these questions here. And then there's these blogs. Are these blogs? Are these official things? By Joel, by Joel, by Joel, by Joel. And this is November 8th, 2021. So it's still being updated. But it says 10 most popular of 2019. So even if someone's doing the work, they see this, they're going to get the idea that this thing maybe it's not updated enough. The person isn't giving it enough attention. So there's a lot of questions I have here, and time is money, and time is a resource we don't get back. So when you have more questions, you'll bounce. And that's a term I want to emphasize. You'll bounce. You'll leave to go somewhere else because you're not visually thinking that what you want here is here, even if it is. And so you'll go to a competitor. So now that we've kind of looked at like really bad CSS through all these examples here, let's go and see how we actually install it, do some very tiny small examples, but just keep in the back of your mind that it's very, very, very easy to make a bad looking website. And some of your first projects will look bad, and that's fine. But just know as you become professionals, there are definitely good ways and bad ways to design a website. So ask yourself as you're making them, is it confusing? Are you taking someone through a flow? Are you explaining to them what you want them to view? So let's go ahead and import CSS. So let's go ahead and let's start with seeing how do we import CSS into a project. So I have this demo web right here. It's actually this folder. Don't mind these other things right here. You may now and then see random other folders appear and disappear throughout the series because I'm always working on something. So we're inside of a folder here. Let's go ahead and do index.html. So we're going to create this. Oh, because I have a typo. I was like, I'm wondering why it's not auto-completing there. Okay, sweet. We have this. We'll start over. And then now we have this. We have our baseline. So let's do CSS order example. And so let's go ahead and do, I did Control Shift T all at one time. And since I use this most frequently, we have this live server, which I talked about in the first video. I wish it would get it to stay at the bottom here. So we're going to bring that on over. We could actually make it pretty small because we're not going to be doing a ton here. So the next thing that we're going to do is come in here and do just an H1. And then we're going to say this is some dank CSS. Awesome. So we have this. We're not really doing any CSS because this is just straight markup, just an H1. So there's three ways that you could add in CSS. You could do it from an external file, which is exceedingly common. You could do it in the head, which is less common. I don't really see that a whole lot. And then you could kind of just do it in line inside of the element, which I don't like as much, but you will eventually use other products, libraries, technologies that rely upon that. But that's not something we're going to focus on heavily right here. So let's make an external file, call it style.css. I'm going to take this, I'm going to click, I'm going to drag this right on over. I'm going to click this right here. And let me just make this a bit smaller. There we go. We don't need to see all this meta stuff up here. So we have CSS, and what are we going to do? Let's go ahead and do something like, I don't know, let's do H1. And then we'll do color. We'll do green, yellow because it's disgusting. I'm going to add a semicolon there at the end, or not a semicolon. Yeah, semicolon. Sometimes I get semicolons and colons mixed up. And then I hit save, and then nothing happened. Well, this sucks. Am I doing something wrong? I want to take this H1, and I want to make the color of it this really disgusting green yellow. And also, if you've downloaded that CSS plugin, I could actually click this and drag it to, make it a different color. So this is the syntax. We have an H1. We have the opening and closing squiggly bracket. And on the inside, we have the thing that I want to change, which is color. I'm hovering over it right now, and it says, sets the color of an element's text. Okay, that's easy enough. If I want to come down here, it'll take me to some documentation. Tell me about it. That's super cool. But it's not, this isn't green yellow. That's because we need to bring it into the file. We'll do it like this. And just to let you know, I've been programming for a hot minute now. I still sometimes forget the long form of how to bring in CSS. My brain just sucks. But with Emmet, which auto completes for you, I just type in link. I see, oh, cool, CSS. And it auto names it, href, which is the file it's referencing, style.css. And you can see this is named style CSS. This is style CSS. This is a style sheet we're bringing in. It gives you everything you need right here. If yours was called styles or, Mark's styles or Bernie's styles, you could rename this file to match whatever it is you want to bring in. It's not hard and set, and it has to be style.css. I'm just doing this for ease of naming convention. But now we see it's green, yellow. Okay, that's kind of cool. Let's come up here, and what I want to do is do this. What is this doing? What is this star doing? If you've taken other classes, you realize that this means all. So everything. And so what I'm going to do is just do background color. I'm going to do a dark gray. And now a bit more balanced. You could kind of see the, this is some dank CSS. You can see this really gross green yellow color. Let me bring this over here. And this is making the body, which is this here, and the H1 dark gray, so it looks very seamless. So this is a way you could target, obviously everything in the page. This is how you could target an H1. So even if I wanted to come down here and make another one that said other H1, we could see this targets every single H1 that is going to be in this page because it's being imported as such. So it's just looking down and saying everything that is an H1, green, yellow. And this is looking at anything and everything in your file and says, just make it dark gray for a background. But what if we wanted to make a change? What if we wanted to do something else, something different? So we could come in here and we're going to type style. Cool. So we have this. And what if I wanted to do H1, color, Alice blue, whatever that is. Oh, okay. That's kind of neat. So it was green, yellow, but now it's Alice blue. Okay. Well, you also mentioned that there's a third way to add a style. So let's come in here and do this. Style, color. This is actually very weird. Choco. Interesting. So we have, and let me move this down, word wrap it here. That actually looks not the best, but you space this out here so at least helps a little bit with y'all. So we have this H1 green yellow, which we saw it change to. We saw this Alice blue, which is what this is. But then we see this color, which is chocolate, which to me is like an orange. And how does this work, right? And that's because there's actually a formula to this, and I don't have it memorized. I guess you could look it up if you want to. But this is a very high level. This is more specific, and this is very specific. And so this will say, yeah, all the H1s do this. This is saying, no. I'm being a bit more specific because I'm more, I guess from my wording, I'm more deeply applied to this file. I'm saying specifically in this file, I'm making these changes. And so this takes, kind of like a second level of priority. But then when you go actually inside your element and change it there, that's like almost we could think of it in terms like this for our example, the last line of authority, or it has the most authority. And it says, regardless of what we say in the head where we put the style or in any other external file, as this thing renders, I'm only going to listen to this instruction for this kind of style. If I wanted to come in here and do font size, which we're going to get to the fonts later on, but let's just say we'll do 60 pixels. You notice this stuff just got a lot larger. Green, yellow, which I think the color thing's messing up here because it looks like it's chocolate, right? Don't let that distract you. But it's green, yellow. Okay. We have this, Alice blue right here. Let me save it. Okay, so it just did a weird thing. So sorry, it changed the color, then changed it back. I don't know why. That's a plugin error right there. So we see nothing truly is green, yellow, but everything is 60 pixels in size. But the colors are handled differently because, like I said, this is being applied specifically inside of the H1. And this is saying, okay, there's no specific style inside of my element, but I do see this right here. I see that you want me to be Alice blue. If we removed this, it would say, okay, there's no style in here. Oh, I see a style sheet. I'm going to look out And okay, you want me to be 60 pixels in font size. So this is the way kind of the precedence takes order. It may take a little bit to get used to, but just to let you know that even when you use an external style sheet, there are other orders of precedence that you could create and make. And we're going to get into that as we go on throughout CSS. But just know that this is usually the most abstract. This is way more specific, and this is about as specific as you can get for giving it a styling instruction. Okay. So in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to do stuff with font. I have nothing on the page yet, but what I'm going to do right now is go through and create some just random text on the screen. And this is going to be about places that I want to travel and maybe some other gibberish thrown in there if I decide. So let's go ahead and do this. So first what I'm going to do is create, this, actually let's rename this to H1. As you can see, if you have the plugin I suggested from the first video, when I changed it from a 2 to a 1, I did it for the opening and closing tag here. Say, this is where I am going to change my font. So we have that as an example. Let's actually move this out of the way for now. We'll come down here. We'll have an H2 just for fun, right? This isn't meant to be the next, amazingly beautiful website. Below are some places I want to travel. And what we're going to do here is do that P times 4. So now we have 4 of them. We're going to say New York, DC, San Diego, then have, where do you want to go? Actually, let me switch this out to an H5 just to have some variance in here. Now I'm going to come down here for an H2. Below are some things I want to eat. We're going to do a P times 3, and we're going to have a giant pretzel. I mean, who doesn't like giant pretzels? Deep dish pizza. And I've never had not tacos from the restaurant in San Diego, but I deeply do. And if you don't know what those are, I suggest looking them up. But then I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to do some interesting things. So let's take this. Why is it doing that? So what I did is I hit Alt. I'm on Windows. I think it may be the Command key on Mac. Don't quote me. You may have to do trial and error. But I hit Alt and I clicked in 2 places. So now my cursor is in 2 areas here. So I could do class equals cool place. Awesome. I'm going to come down here to where it says giant pretzel. I'm going to do ID equals pretzel. That's it. That's all I'm going to add. As you can see, nothing changed when I added the ID or the class. Awesome. So what do these do? We have New York. We have this paragraph tag here. We have normal elements, but now we're embedding stuff in here. This isn't style. So what is it? And these are kind of markers that we could use with our CSS to do some interesting things. So I'm going to hide this a little behind here for now. Bring this on over. So let's go after an effect that I used last time. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to do background color. And then I'm going to do RGB, which is red, green, blue. And I'm going to do those should actually be commas, so I don't know how to type. Alrighty, so I don't know what happened there. There may have been a funny edit on my part. And you didn't see what happened, but suddenly I hit a key and everything got minimized. It was the worst experience ever. So now I have this all, so everything in here, including the body, has this background color, which is this greenish thing. And this may be a little bit hard to read. I get it. That's fine. That's, for the purposes of this video, you could change the color if you want to. We have background color, red, green, blue. If I wanted to move it around, let me do the little, I could do this and it updates. So we're fine there. But let's say I wanted to do something to my H1. This is where I am going to change my font. So we know the syntax is this, H1, open and closing squiggly, bracket here. But what do I do? Like, if I'm a student, like what do I type here? What are my options? So if you don't know, you could just maybe start typing stuff, see if it auto completes, or you could go to a website like I suggested in the first video, W3 Schools. You could go other places as well. So we see tutorials. Okay, let's learn some CSS. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. What is this? Okay, so we have fonts. So we have font families. It tells us a little bit about stuff here. Some font examples. Okay. But it looks like it's given us some other things that we could do. We could have some font style. So we have italics. We could add some font weight in here. Font style up here. We have a font variant, small caps. Okay, so we have some cool stuff going on in here. We have font family. Whereas you could see there's, Papyrus looks incredibly different than Monaco. And then, Times New Roman, we've all written papers before, so we've seen Times New Roman. So if you don't know, this is a good place to go to get some ideas of what you could actually do with your font. I do this sometimes when I forget even stupid syntax stuff, or maybe I want to do something special and I forget that there's a property I could access. So, sometimes you just have to look it up. But luckily for you, let me move this on over here. I've already written these examples out, so I'm going to kind of walk through them here. So let's take this H1 and let's just do font family. That was one we just got done looking at. And it gives you a list of options. Now, this is not, you're stuck in these options. You could actually type them. But let's do something like the Times New Roman, Times, and then serif. Okay, so this is kind of neat here. So we have font family Times New Roman, but why is it a list? And this is kind of like the fallback order. If a browser's like, we don't really like Times New Roman, we're going to fall back into Times and then serif. So this is kind of the target of what you want it to be, but you'd always kind of want similar fonts to fall back on, so you don't end up with more than one font on the page and it just seems you have these clash of styles, right? You don't have to worry about that a ton right now. Just know that that's what's going on right here. So we have font family. Let's change the font weight. Okay. Let's change this to 100. And we see that this is a lot thinner now. What does font weight do? It says specifies the weight of glyphs in the font, their degree of blackness or stroke thickness. Once again, I'm just hovering over this. Visual Studio Code is providing this for me. It's pretty cool. Well, if we wanted to do something like, let's move this over a little bit more. And let's just do 900. So we can see that this is a lot thicker. Move it back to 100. This gets a lot thinner right here. So the thickness has gone down. So let's do font style. Just slapping this in here for no reason. Let's do oblique. And we see that this is, like italicized essentially. And why do we have it like this? I don't know. This is just what I designed for this example, but you could do this for your examples as well. And sometimes it's just a lot of hunting and pecking. Sometimes you realize that maybe it needs to be 200 instead. And sometimes you may not notice a gigantic difference at all in how things look, right? So there's a lot of nudging and moving of small values. And it's not always just font weight 300, I'm good to go. Sometimes you need to tweak some small things there. So we have this done. Let's go to our H2. Let me slide this over. So we only have one, and then we have two of them here. So we should have below are some places I want to travel, and below are some things I want to eat. These are the next two things that should change on the page. So we're just going to change this to font family, and let's do Georgia. And we see that these kinds of font, the family for New York here, does look a bit different. I know that there's sizings, there's the stroke, thickness factor here, but we could see that this overall is a much more different kind of looking font. Even if we were to take off the oblique here, we could see that these two are quite different, and that this is just, I know this is, font weight 200, but they just feel different, right? So let's go down and practice targeting our paragraph tags here. So we're going to go and change the font size. And you see we actually have words large, larger, extra large, extra, extra small. But we could also come in here and do 20 pixels. Makes things a bit bigger, bit easier to read. What if we wanted to do a text indent? Once again, this is one of those things that I randomly looked up. And now you can see that our paragraph tags are indented into the page, almost as if they're a list, but they're not in any way looking like a list, right? That's pretty cool. And so that's one of the things you want to consider. Sometimes you do want to make lists. Lists are incredibly powerful. They're incredibly helpful. But at the same time, there may be stylistic instances where you don't want a list, but you want maybe the appearance of it. And you could do that by using your paragraph elements here, but you could come in and do a indentation of them, which may help. It may be a better solution. Then let's do something else. Let's do a text. I don't know why I auto-completed that. Decoration, and let's do an underline. So now we have New York, DC, San Diego, and then these things I want to eat down here underlined. Awesome. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. That's pretty powerful. Once again, this is not going to win an award for anything for how it looks, but we're getting there. We're understanding that it doesn't take a whole lot to make this page change. But we could see we have our paragraph elements, but it looks like two of them have this thing called class cool place. What does that do? And a class is a way to take stuff like this, like a paragraph, an H2 and H1, but it's another way to group things together, because you may have paragraph elements on the page that, as far as information goes, what they're trying to convey, their placement, they may be in different groups of information. And it doesn't make sense here. These are just kind of willy-nilly places that I dreamt up. But let's say that New York and DC are places I really want to go, right? And I want to convey that to myself, my significant other, my dog. I don't think he could read. But say we want to group this certain class wherever we apply it to give it extra meaning. So we're going to come here and do I could even type. And we can see here that cool place for both of these paragraph elements here now have this color Charteau. I think that's kind of an interesting name there. But we can see on the page that these are this neon green color, not very attractive. But here's some places I want to travel. And then we have these two highlighted. Obviously, this is a bad website, but maybe this means New York and DC, I have already gone there, or I really want to go there, or they're on my top 2. So now visually, these have, the popping out of flair on the page that we could signify that these have a little bit of extra meaning, whatever that may be. And if I wanted to take this class right here and I wanted to apply it to the H2 or the H1, it does not matter. It doesn't have to be all of the same paragraph or only, certain kinds of headers or headings could use this. It's anything that has the class .coolplace will have the color Charteau or Charteau. It's been a while since I've done French. Another way we could come in here and target these is maybe we come in here and do P dot, meaning the class, coolplace. Okay, let's come in here and do a color. Let's do another RGB, red, green, blue. We'll do 236, 120, and 12. Of course, I can't type. So these are a different color. Okay, we'll talk about that. You may know why, because we just got done discussing it not too long ago. Let's add a letter spacing. It looks goofy as could be. You see, letter spacing is the spacing between each letter. There's 10 pixels between each, character here. But why did the color change, right? That's really, really, really weird. Well, remember we were talking about precedents, things that are more specific. This is specific, right? Cool place, that's a class, that's a grouping. But this is more specific because it's saying the paragraph element that has this class now has all of these attributes and overrides anything less specific because this isn't specifying that it has to be a paragraph. For instance, if I took this, I came up here to this H2 and I added this in. We see that this is this green color. But why is it not orange? Because this is saying P paragraph element, that dot, meaning there's going to be a class, followed by the class name. I want anything applied to me that is in between the opening and closing squiggly brackets. Cool. Awesome. That sounds good to me. And the last thing I want to talk about in here for this example is we have this thing called an ID. Well, it's really this, call it the pound, hashtag, whatever. And let's come in here and do pretzel because we have this giant pretzel right here. So we're looking at this on the page. It says ID pretzel. And it's yelling at me because there's nothing in here. So let's go ahead and let's change the font size. Let's not get too fancy here. Let's just keep with the stylings that we know about. Give it some font weight. 700. Text transform. Uppercase. And so we didn't change any color, but we see the font size is much larger. The font weight, it's the strokes are thicker. And then we make it all uppercase, which is super cool, right? That's less stuff that we have to programmatically do, right? And this is an ID. okay, why can I have just done something with like a class? Can I have made like a class, you know, cool hyphen place hyphen pretzel? Maybe I could have, but classes are meant for multiple groupings. Is there's more than one? We have an H2, we have these two paragraph elements here, but an ID is meant for one thing only. In your browsers, you do this stuff will complain that you have more than one unique ID. And so think of your student ID or your social security number or whatever maybe the state or the government uses to identify you. You know, there should only be one of those. And the same goes for HTML and CSS. When I say ID pretzel, I am telling the interpretation through the Chrome that there's only going to be one giant or one pretzel ID here. And so if we think about terms of precedence, right, this is kind of specific. Classes are more specific, so they're grouping. This is much more specific, but IDs, since there's only one of them, is even more specific than a class, right? So we're kind of dwindling down from everything to kind of everything, but not really. And then we get to a point of saying, no, this one thing on the page is going to have these styles and nothing else, necessarily can share that because it doesn't have the same ID. So that's how IDs work. That's how classes work. That's how general styling with font goes. Let me expand this out here. And you can see that even though it's ugly, this is a lot of interesting ideas with very little work. And as you could tell, it's incredibly repetitive. So what we're going to do in the upcoming sections is work with, images. We're going to do stuff with links and tables as well. So I think the next one is images. So I'll see y'all in just a moment. What we're going to do now is work with images. So I've deleted everything from my style CSS file. I have updated the title of the page. We can see it says images. And we now have this assets thing with my dog, Bernie. Look how cute that guy is. I mean, look how cute. Look at that nose. Anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to bring him in, and then we're going to kind of show some ways that we could change and work with pictures. It's not the end all be all here. There's definitely some things we could do depending upon our needs on the page to work with images and make them work for us. One thing I'm going to say out of the gate is there's different kinds of image types. I may touch that upon that and maybe an extras video I do or in class, but just know that sometimes it really does matter if something's a JPEG compared to a PNG or some other format out there. But for right now, just to learn pictures are pictures. So let's go ahead and do an image. So I'm going to type IMG, and then I'm going to hit enter. All right, so we have a source, and then we have an alt. Since we know we're bringing in a picture of this cute guy right here, he's actually sleeping right next to me. He needs to get a job. We have Bernie, so we have alt, because we want our alt text to be there in case the picture breaks or someone is using some kind of assisted device. We want them to know what's there. So I'm going to come in here, dot period. We could see, or period / assets, which is the folder where it exists. We see this. And now, I mean, I love my dog. Love my dog more than a lot of things. That's a lot of them. That's a lot of Bernie, right? We like him, but maybe not that much. So how do we handle this? So we could come in here and just do a general IMG, which IMG for image, IMG up here. Okay, we're targeting that. Let's do a max width. So we say we don't want it to be any bigger than 100%. And so if we come here, it says allows authors to constrain content within a certain range. So let's do 100%. And we see that, that seems to make it from blowing up insanely large. So that's kind of cool. What if I wanted to say, I don't know, 50%? Now we have this. So it's 50% of the, constraint that it was originally. So this is a bit, better. So we see it shrinks, but it never goes beyond that 50% mark, I believe, of the like original image size. So it's not just blowing up infinitely, right? I mean, as it gets bigger, it'll hit, probably a point it can't get any larger. But as you can see, it's a bit responsive, and we're not in the whole responsive web section of this course yet. But this is a way that we could start thinking about it, right? What if we, didn't have this on here? Let's just remove this. Hit save. It's that's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. We do not want that, because what if we have other content we want to convey? It's not going to get out there. So now we have 50%. When it gets bigger, hey, that looks good, right? But let's do a little bit of fun. Let's add a little pizzazz on here. Let's add a box shadow to it. And so this is not something you have to do, but I think it's something that will help your photos have a little bit more pop. And so we have this here. Yeah, it's not the sexiest looking drop shadow here. Maybe it's a little too thick. But what does this mean? What does it do? So we have multiple pixel values. So this would tip off to you that there's multiple kinds of, things it's adjusting. So the first argument is the offset of the x-axis. This is the y-axis. This is the blur radius. And then the last one is the spread radius. And then the last one is the color. And personally, I could come in here and go into a big depth, write a whole, little section here about what really is blur radius or spread radius. But I think that your best bet is just to come in here and just start playing with this yourself. So this is a little bit of a box shadow you could add to make it a little bit more snazzy. Say I wanted to change this, move it down to a 2. Okay, maybe that didn't do a whole ton right there, but this is the thing with CSS. I wanted to take it down from a 4 to a 2. See, it didn't really change a whole lot. Maybe there's something else I need to do with the box shadow to make it, less, intense there. But I'm not going to do that now. I'm just letting you know that's kind of how you work with CSS. So let's come down here and do something else. We're adding 2 breaks in here just to cheat a little bit. And let's go ahead and take this image of Bernie. We'll come in here, but let's add a class. And I know there's only going to be one of them. So maybe we're breaking the rules a little bit. Maybe this should be an ID, but this is just for a light example here. So let's come and do Bernie image, because maybe we know later on there'll be other pictures of Bernie or a dog or just pictures in general on here. So even if you only have one right now, it's fine that you're using a class. Let's do 150 pixels. And then let's say we want to center it. Well, we could do something like display block and then margin auto. And now we have a centered picture, which is 150 pixels, the width of it, and the margin from left to right. So margin, when we get into the actual part of this lecture that goes into kind of the what is a margin, what is padding, what is a border, all that other stuff, the box model. We'll discuss that a bit more. But just know that if you want to center something, there's a few ways you could do it. But you could display something as a block, which means it's going to take up everything that for the line that it's sitting on. And we haven't discussed block, inline, that stuff specifically yet. But as a preview, block means the line that it sits on, it forces everything else down below it. So it's not going to want to share the space with anything else. And then when we say margin auto, this is a way of saying you just kind of want to center it from the left and the right. You kind of want the same space to the left and to the right of this element here. And so those are some ways that we could bring in images. We could stylize them. We could put a box shadow. We could make them a bit more responsive, or we could make things, permanently 150 pixels, which I don't always recommend. And how we could also start to think about centering and positioning things on a page. And so in the next example, what we're going to look at is links, and then we're going to look at tables. So let's go ahead and see how we could work with links and stylize those using CSS. So now let's look at links. It's links right here. Let me change this, even though I think it's funny. Typos are funny, right? So what we're going to do first is we're going to make 3 links, and then actually I think maybe about 4. And then we're going to style them and kind of show you some other cool CSS things you could do. But first, we only have the index HTML and the style.css. That's all we're going to need. So we're going to minimize this over here. Let's drag this out a little bit. And let's go ahead and get the page set up. So first we're going to do an H1. And I know this may seem kind of unnecessary, but I just kind of am used to kind of just labeling my page. I think it's easier. So let's first inspect this before we go any farther. We're going to talk about this, I think, in the next video. But we have these links right here. And if we had a bunch of these next in here, they wouldn't, if we were to copy this, right? We come over here and we see that they're down, each one's on its own line. But if we were to remove that and simply do something like this, we see that they line up here. Now we can make changes in the CSS to prevent this. But one technique I see is to take something that will share its space on the same line and wrap it in something that'll force the next element to go down to the next line, which is what a paragraph tag does. So we have an href here, and we have this pound hash sign thing going on. And this means that when you click it, nothing happens. Nothing's going to, go on. You're not going to navigate anywhere. We have this title. And so it says opens nothing. So we're going to hover. And we see the title now produces this box that says opens nothing. So we click it. And we see there was a change up here. We have index.html, and then we have this pound sign afterward. And so when the browser sees this, it's like, oh, okay, I guess you're not going to go anywhere. So don't look over those small techniques, right? Maybe you want to wrap something in an element that will shove everything to the next line. Also, if you don't want it to go anywhere, say you're just mocking something up, you could just throw in the pound sign there. And if you want some hover over, it'll kind of tell you more about where you're going, aspect or nature of it. You could add title to your link. So let's go ahead and make the next ones here. And I'm just going to copy and paste and then make the changes thusly. So I'm going to space these out because I think that's visually easier when there's like actual gaps. So this is our second one here. And what are we going to update? So we're going to take the title off of this just so we just don't want, we already learned the lesson up here, and I don't want unnecessary, things going when I'm trying to, hone in on a particular point. So we have this, we have goes to XKCD, which is an awesome online comic book. I actually had a friend, well, not a comic book, it's a comic strip kind of thing. I actually had a friend meet the creator once at a party in Boston, and that was a really cool story to hear. So we're going to write down external, and you're going to wonder what that means, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and copy this one more time. Come into here. Then we're going to come in, we're going to give it the value of target underscore blank. And we're going to change the text goes, to XKCD internal. And then we're going to do a send email. And I'm just going to copy this over from my other screen just to save a little bit of time. And so let me expand this on over. So now we have our 4 links. So we have this one right here, which opens nothing. We've already established what's all going on in here. But now we have an external and an internal. And the difference between these two is this target blank kind of deal. And then we have mail. I'm not going to click this. It works. But what it'll do is open up whatever on your operating system is the default for your mail. When you click on it, it will respond thusly and have the to or the, it won't have the subject or any of the message, but it'll have bernie@thedog.com is who you're mailing it to. But let's go ahead and click the external. You know what? I actually switched these up right here. That was a typo on my end. So let's go to external and internal. As it happens when you don't read. Yeah, that's what happens when you read your code on your other page incorrectly. Now that I double check it. So, all right. Now that you guys don't think I'm good at this, we have this right here. It says goes XKCD internal. So we click it and we see we go straight to this website. And these are fun to read if you can't go to sleep at night, right? Very, very fun, comics or stick figures. But you see that it opens inside. So it goes internally. But if we go to the external, we see this target blank. And this pops it open in another browser. And one strategy you may want to have is if you're linking within your own website, maybe you're selling something, you want to keep them inside at all times. But say there's a link going to somewhere else outside of your website, and maybe you want to retain the viewer. You don't want them to click a link and then bam, your website's gone. It's not in a tab. It's nowhere to be seen. And therefore you may not get that sale or that ad revenue. But if we have target underscore blank, we click this and you see it pops it open. But hey, I could come back to my website here. Maybe I have stuff in the shopping cart. All right. I checked what I need to over here. I don't really need to, view anything or have any strong opinions. Let me come back and click purchase, right? So that's kind of a couple of the strategies you could think about when it comes to using different kinds of links. So now that we've gone over these links, let's come in here and style them up a little bit. So I'm going to do what I do in a lot of stuff I've done so far, and that is give everything a background color. Cool. Doesn't make it, a bit better, but I just don't like that bright white everywhere. So now I'm going to target every kind of, a tag right here or, hyperlink. And so I'm going to just let's do font size, 45 pixels, color, And yes, I made these off screen, so it's not me just randomly smacking the keyboard. And then text decoration. And this is the one, as you notice, let me pull this over. Let me pull this over a bit. So we have text decoration here. Let's remove this. And you see these look like stereotypical links. You have the thickness, the underline. It still looks very much like a link. If we add the decoration, it removes that underline kind of vibe to it as we move our cursor, in that way to interact with it, which when you're styling a modern website, you're probably not going to want that as much. You may end up using a button to navigate or something along those lines. But if you leave the text decoration on and you just have the default styling of a link, it's going to look more dated, in my opinion. Maybe in a few years, it'll go back to being in fashion. But a lot of websites now will decorate and do things differently than just the standard how we set it up originally is no styling. So now let's get into something called the pseudo selectors. And you may be thinking, oh, we talked about classes, we talked about an ID, we talk about scope and what has precedence over other things. So what are these pseudo selectors? This is really weird. So we'll go ahead and do this. And there's actually a lot of pseudo selectors out there, like a lot. And I'm not going to cover all of them, and you don't want me to cover all of them. Just know there are any way you need to target an element on the page, there is a way to do it in CSS. Even really weird, obscure syntax kind of ways that I've looked at that I may never use. So let's go ahead and do something. And I'm just going to... Will it? No, it's not auto-completing there. That kind of stinks. So let's do something here, and let's do an unvisited link right here. So we'll give ourselves some spacing, unvisited link, and it'll look like this. Oh, not quite like that, because that was me messing up. So now it's red. So if it's an unvisited link, we'll see that it's red. So we'll click this. It's still red right here. And when there was the visited link I was interacting with, and I know that I've come into issues with browsers and whatnot, where if you visited something, it changes you could change the color. And I was kind of struggling a little bit with this. So this is more of an example. I don't know if you would necessarily want to use this, an unvisited link. I mean, we see when we go to the Google homepage and other stuff, but on your site personally, I don't see these a ton. But this is one way you could say, hey, it's red if you haven't clicked or, gone here yet or anything like that. But if we want to do a hover over, we could do this. And let's make it very apparent that we're hovering over it. And we see that it grows. Now, this is something that I've seen before when you're using a mouse. You may have some kind of animation, which you could do animations. So you could say, over the half a second, make this thing grow from its default up to 50, pixels, or slightly change color, or do something else kind of cool. But as you notice, it's kind of nice because you may have a page that, for better or for worse, for your fault or the designer's fault, may be a little busy. So this is a nice way of giving attention to something as you hover over it, just in case, you accidentally click something or tap something. I mean, we've all been there. But another one I want to show is what happens when you click the link. And this one's, maybe I have to slow it down, I'm not sure. But this is one that is a bit interesting. let's do Alice blue here. And so I'm going to click, and I'm holding my mouse down. So I'm doing the clicking, but I haven't released the click yet. And you see that this churns this Alice blue, which I don't know why it's called Alice blue. It's clearly white, at least to me. And so when you click it, it's doing this. Now, once again, if you were to have your links be a button of some kind, you could have this be some kind of animation. Like if you looked at Material UI or other popular libraries, when you click a button, there's almost like this dimming splash effect that may happen. And so this just turns it white, and it kind of looks ugly with the red and looks really boring. But if you were to get a little creative, you could actually, make this active when you click it, give it a little bit more personality. And so these are just some of the pseudo selectors out there that you could use. So we've seen a lot of different ways that we could select our elements over here. And this is some strategies we could use with links, and then some ways we could come in and stylize, or even in some cases, remove styles to then later on bring our own in. So in the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to go over a table. I know it's not the most exciting sounding thing, but you're going to have to build a table at some point in your career. So let's do that. And then let's do it also with some CSS. So now what we're going to do is build a table, and then we're going to style it. You're going to see a lot of tables in your career. You're going to see a lot of lists. You're going to see a lot of forms. There's an argument out there that aside from games, all websites are, I don't want to use R twice in a row, but websites are just giant lists of things, and that's it. They're all giant to-dos, which is comedically, I can understand, but trust me, you're going to be building a lot of tables and lists. So let's go ahead and build this table out. And so what we're going to do first is come in here and do a table. And this is going to wrap everything. This is telling the browser, yo, you're about ready to make a table. It's about to get really serious in here. So what do tables need? Tables need rows. So let's go ahead and do a tr, which table row. All right. Cool. And then we're going to do two table headers. We're going to make this very, very, very simple here. So we're going to do a table header. Let's use Emmet times 2. So th, table header times 2. So now let's do games. And then let's do food. All right. This looks really bad. I'm sorry if you have to squint. But yeah, this is how things are right now. We'll pretty them up in a minute. So we have another table row. And then let's come down in here and give it some data. So we have games, we have food, and this is for, let's just come up here and add this in. About Bernie. All right, cool. Now we have that, and we're squared away. So we have another row. Let's add some more data in here. And then we have Chase's tail. And let's just do one more, and you'll see why. And if you have to pause this video or any of my videos, I don't think I try to move too fast. But if this Emmet thing isn't just your style and you'd rather type it out longhand, you can even wait till I'm done. I try to be conscious of what I'm doing and how I used to watch tutorials. So yeah, I'm trying not to speed up at all. Let's see. So we have this turkey, and looking at my other example I have of this already done. And let's just keep this going. Last one here, dead honest this time. I don't know why I just started typing there in the middle. Let's come back and delete that. So we have this ultra ugly table right here. We have, the row, which everything is a row, 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 and then another row right here. And everything else is table data, but we have the table header, and we notice that the header naturally makes this a bit more bold, right? And it centers it a bit, so you don't get it confused with the table data, which is everything else that comes below it. Awesome. So how could we do stuff with CSS to make this a little bit better looking? Well, there's a million ways we can make this look cool. Let's do a very just kind of quick markup here. No pun intended, because that's my name. All right, so we have this. It expands it out, so the table now is going to be, 100% of the width of what we're viewing right here. Even though there's no background going on, it is taken up 100%. Let's do something special with the table header. Let's do a background color. I don't know. Let's do Blanche Almond. Yeah, that looks kind of gross. But like I said, our work doesn't have to be beautiful. We just have to learn how to do stuff, right? So now we're doing something interesting here. What is this? We have table data, and actually, you know what? I did that twice here. My fault. But if you put a comma here, you could apply a lot of the same styles, or the styles, whatever comes in here, to multiple things. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to add a border. Two pixels solid black. And so let's move this on over. And we see now that the table itself has a border. We could trace that with our mouse right here, but all the table data has a black border too. And borders are really cool because they give you a way to essentially problem solve in a way that you could visually see where something is, how much space is it taking up, what shape is it. So if you ever don't know what's going on or where something is, try throwing a border, 2 pixels, 1 pixel, whatever you want to on here, because it's a good technique to help you problem solve. So now we have that. Let's go ahead and do something with the table header. And then we have the table data. And let's just do a font size of 35 or 25 pixels. Let's go with 35. It's a lot larger, but when you're like me, your eyes are starting to go. And so that's a lot more respectable in size. I like this. But what if I wanted to make this, because, you have all these rows. What if you had like a lot, right? It's real easy to miss something. What if the font isn't as big, right? There's a million ways you can miss something on this table. I know this is just a 4-row example, but how could we get around this and make it pop even a little bit more and make it easier on the eyes? Because after all, our CSS is to help guide our eyes through the HTML, which is the markup. Well, we could do it this way. And now, like I said, I'm not a designer here, but every other one now, every odd one, all you see is I did table row, and then I used one of those pseudo selectors, nth child, and so nth is just whatever one, right? In this case, the argument I'm giving it here is odd. This is it. So it's going to look for every single one that is an odd number, and it's going to make the background gray. So if I want another pseudo selector in here, I could do something like this. Background color green. So green, green. So now as I hover over it, I could see what I'm selecting. So maybe I have some kind of data or something special and my boss or coworker needs to see something. Rather than me pointing over, a line that may or may not be gray or white. Like I said, maybe the table is really massive and I need to show something really quickly. Hey, do you see this data right here? In this case, it's Bernie likes to chase his tail and likes to eat scraps around my feet. But this is one of those other tiny little things you could do to add emphasis and guide your user's eyes when they're working with the table. And this is one of the zillions of ways that you could style one. There's many ways that are better than what I've suggested here, but this is just to get your feet wet, and I hope you enjoyed it. So now I want to look at developer tools. So I brought this up before. I really want to go out here on vacation someday, but this is not tacos. If you ever want to go to a YouTube video or YouTube page where it's this guy makes really awesome food, I would look up Sam the Cooking Guy. But what we want to do is, maybe we see some inspiration. We see this and we see, okay, there's this cool picture. Okay, we have some centered text, a centered button. Okay, this is awesome. But we have also text on top of a picture. Well, that's pretty cool. We have the socials up here. We're scrolling, other stuff is happening. And, maybe there's, this is kind of this paper effect. It looks kind of cool, like it's behind everything. It was kind of like a parallax. And if you don't know what that is, you can just Google that word and you'll see that sweet effect. And it just, oh, there's the food. So one thing we could do, and you've seen me do this, is we could right click, and I think virtually every browser has this. It may not be the exact same steps. We could click inspect. And now let me move this over. We have the entire website. This is super cool. We could actually play with it if we wanted to. And you could see that there's a lot going on. Odds are what this website is using when you see a lot of stuff like this, there's some kind of generator. So you know how there's like, was it Wix and I don't know, there's other website generators out there that allow you to do the drag and drop kind of stuff. And, when you see a lot of, I think these are all the ID, or class. Look at all the classes that you have in here, right? This is a lot of stuff. And so don't get discouraged. Then you're not going to be typing stuff out like this unless you're making a website generator. In that case, you'll be doing it with a lot of other people, so the work will be distributed. But your websites for this class, for this tutorial series, are never going to be this massively complex here. But it gives you an idea to see how things are laid out. We see all the scripts here, right? But then we have some more divs and some other stuff. So could this be loaded a little bit better? Probably, right? But if we want to click on something and interact and see where is it at in all this gibberish, we could come up here, select this, which we did, and click on it, and wham bam, we're right here. So now we can see this hyperlinks us to /shop. And the title is coming up as such, where it says nottacos.com/shop. Even though I don't know if there's specifically a title on here, it's just giving it to us like that anyways. But if I want to right click on here, I could always duplicate it. I could also edit as HTML. And I could say, Bernie. My dog just looked at me. And so now it says Bernie up here. And you may think, why would I ever need this? And that is because sometimes you will be having a website you're maintaining that auto-generates some of this code. and you have to maybe go behind the scenes to add some links or some buttons. I've had to do this before, but maybe you have a request to add a link up here and the text is really long. And because it's 3 characters too long or something weird like that, the rest of your link flow up here looks like trash. I've had to deal with that before. And so it's nice sometimes to come up here, and before you apply the changes in your code, you could actually go into your existing work that may be hosted somewhere and say, what would it look like if I added this kind of text or changed this or that about the web page? So that's cool. You could, wholesale delete it as well. So let's go to this right here. So we have this image. I don't know if it actually went deep into the image or not. So that's the image, div block. Interesting. Oh wow, look at all that space they added in here as well. That's kind of interesting. But let's try to find something we could easily latch onto. We have strong. Okay, we're hiring. So we have this right here. And let's come in and add something like color green. Font size 50 pixels. And you see that it made it larger. And now that it's green, you could barely, notice it because it's a dark color on a dark background here. It kind of blends in. Plus there's lots of greens over here as well. I don't know, let's make this pink. I guess that's slightly better. And so what you can see here is not only could we click on it, but we could come down here and we could just, keep adding more and more and more kind of stuff that we want to. So let's do text decoration. And you notice this also auto-suggesting stuff to us, which is pretty neat as well. So let's go ahead and do, I don't know, dashed. Is that going to do anything special? If it is, I cannot see what it is doing. Let's try another one here. Let's do wavy. It's not doing much. Let's do underline. I think that should work. There we go. Underline. Cool. And just know sometimes that certain attributes will or just will not work. I'm not going to dig into like why those two just didn't, or I couldn't tell if they were really doing anything. But you might, want to use something like this method to double check before you just type the code into the CSS, assume it works, and then ship it out. And so this is a way that you could use the developer tools, because you can hone in on certain elements of maybe your own page or someone else's page. And even though they may be generated monsters like this, you could still click on elements. You could see what their parents are and see roughly, what is their padding? What is their other attributes they have that make this look the way it does? Now let's go over to XKCD. I know for a fact this is a less complicated website, 100%. So let's click on this. We have the banner, we have the div ID, and then we have this hyperlink for the Black Lives Matter, and then we have the picture on the inside here. This is a much simpler website, and you could definitely see the siblings and the children way easier as you walk down this tree structure here. And we'll get more into that when we talk about the DOM. So if you ever had a class and you hated doing anything with trees, we're not going to get that technical or scary here, but it'll help you understand how websites are kind of built later on. We have the middle container. So we're actually hovering over middle container, but you see it light up this whole middle section here, which is pretty cool. And then we have the bottom, which is obviously the bottom. It's being highlighted as I'm moving on over. And if I want to come in and add a style, I could do that here. Or if I want to come in and just wholesale change something, let's say I wanted to change the width. I could just unclick this and, it nudges it ever so slightly. Okay, nothing special. I want to take off the padding. You see that changes how it looks. The margin top really isn't doing much right here. But it's not just about coming in and writing your own style, as you could come in and edit or just entirely churn off what is already there. So There's a million things you could do with the developer tools. You could go into the source. You could see, what is this? What is it made out of? You could see what's being loaded in. You could see what happens as the network is downloading the page. You could do a lot of things in here, but I recommend for now just going through, finding your favorite website or favorite blog or whatever it may be, and just right-clicking, inspecting, and just going through and making some changes, clicking on some stuff. And if you don't like it, hit refresh. It reverts everything back to the way it was. The owner of the website will never know any different because you're not actually making changes on their end, just on yours. So this is the intro here to the dev tools. This is probably as much as I'm going to cover it, but get to know this stuff because it is one of those very handy things that will give you edges in making good websites and designs that you'd be worse off for not knowing.